Gathered here. This chant is by Philip Porter, a Bay Area composer, artist, and improvisational dance director. Encourages us to invite and welcome a sustaining presence of the life force of the forces which upholds life.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Good morning. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. And we're really glad to have you with us this morning, whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us on the live streams because you don't actually trust that it's not going to start raining again. So we're grateful to have you here. And welcome back if you're on campus for the first time in a while, and for those online, welcome back as well. We hope that everyone will join us in the Borton Hall afterward for coffee and conversations, and that we also will have our virtual coffee hour online, which will be held for 15 minutes after the service, so you can say hello. If you are visiting, we would love to have you sign a visitor's card so that we can get you in touch with more of who we are and what we're doing. And next week we'll have a special class a special gathering in order to let you know a little bit more about us called UU 101, and you can sign up at the visitors table as well. Today, those of you who are ready to make the commitments of membership can join and sign our book, and you can meet me and our board members at the table in the back of the sanctuary. If it's still sunny, we'll put it outside, but we're not taking anything for granted today, at about 12 o'clock, right after the service. For those in need of a listening ear, we have pastoral listeners on campus, and you can see them near the water column during the offertory, so you can follow up with them after the service if that would be helpful. Next Saturday is our fellowship event, which is a wonderful time to meet more of the people who make up this community. And since the pandemic, we've had scores of people join, and they haven't had a chance to meet our more established members, those who have been here longer. And we also have lots of people who haven't had a chance to meet them. So it's a great time to get together and meet some new people. We hope that you will come forward for that. Please join the Justice Council today for a conversation about reparations today at 12:15 online. The link is in the calendar, and you can speak to Reverend Rodney after the service for more information. And finally, now is the time to start signing up for our Winter Nights program, which is the 2 weeks where we house families who are without housing in our Borton Hall. And you can see this week at MDUC and the Justice emails for information about how to do this. Welcome to this beloved community.
Took the long way around. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kevin Shea. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. Welcome to our service. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community. We begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. March is a great time to get involved. Check out the weekly email and Beacon newsletter for the many, many things which are happening here. We are so glad to have you here with us. Our expectation is that those who are attending in person have no symptoms of any of the various communicable things going around. Thank you for honoring this commitment to keep one another safe. And a few announcements. Do yourself a favor and come to the fellowship event. This is one of the all-church events which are fun and will help you learn more about our congregation. We are currently seeking for people to host tables at the event. If you can see Janice Davis after the service, or email the board if you're interested in hosting next Saturday. And welcome. It's good to be together.
So this is the time that we greet one another, and today we are really grateful to have Casey Gardner as our worship leader, and Casey has brought to us the topic of positionality. So as we greet one another, let's say to one another, I see you where you are.
I'd like to invite those who are young and young at heart to come forward for a mindful moment. I promise it'll be mindful. Awesome. And as you're coming forward, let's scoot all the way over so that we're not blocking our aisles. So let's sit mindfully with your spine straight and your body relaxed. Close your eyes and take 3 soft, slow, mindful breaths. Imagine you are in a forest with tall trees. You hear the birds chirping in the trees and the squirrels running across fallen leaves on the ground. You are sitting in front of a small pond. The water is still. Look into the pond. See the reflection of the trees in the clear water. What else do you see? Do you see yourself reflected in the water too? Imagine dropping a pebble into the pond. See the ripples in the water. Keep watching. And when the water becomes still again, open your eyes. Look for still water in the pond any time that you want to feel calm. And let's take 3 more deep breaths. Thank you.
Hello. When you're driving, you can't simply rely on your car's rear view or side view mirrors to keep you and others safe on the road. You have to look over your shoulder before you change lanes. One way to correct your blind spots when it comes to identity is to always situate yourself in relation to a text. State your particular position so that it's clear and not allowed to operate invisibly as neutrality. Zetta Elliott.
Hey, Marina.
Hey, Casey.
Hey, so what do you think we're going to do for the Time for All Ages this week?
Thank you for asking. I was thinking that...
Okay, so I already have some ideas.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, so like I teach high school, right? And I have students, and sometimes I give them homework. So I was thinking for the Time for All Ages, we could do homework.
Oh.
What do you guys think? You guys want to do homework?
I mean, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Well,
What makes you say that?
I don't know. Maybe
Okay, well, what then?
maybe we should read a story. Or I don't know. Do you guys like stories? Yeah? Yeah?
Okay,
Stories.
so maybe we can do a story about doing chores and paying taxes. How does that sound?
I don't think that's the move.
What about if we all eat Brussels sprouts with anchovies? Do you guys like Brussels sprouts with anchovies?
Casey, I'm not so sure we like your ideas.
Why? I think they're great.
Well, look at how people are responding to them.
But people usually love my ideas.
But how do you know that?
Well, I like my own ideas. I like vegetables and homework and chores and going to work and paying my taxes. Don't you guys like that stuff?
Casey, I think the time for all ages is for kids too, and those aren't really things that very many kids like.
Well, then how do I find out what they like?
Well, you could ask them.
Oh, yeah, I guess I could. Hey, guys, can you tell me about the kind of things you like for the time for all ages?
Sleep, a story, eating food. We should have food in our time for all ages. We should break bread together. Stories, okay. Oh, Amy has apples. We'll come find you after the service. Okay, raise your hand if you like stories. What about if we all eat Brussels sprouts? What about skits? No. Okay, we have a no on the skits over here. What about puppet shows? Yeah, puppet shows. Okay. What about getting to sit with your friends? Yeah. And singing songs? Oh, yeah, that one's a big one. Okay. Is there anything else that we're missing? What else do we need in our time for all ages? Board games. We should have a time for all ages with board games. Video games. These are some really great ideas. What'd you say? Oh, basketball. We should play basketball for one of the time for all ages. I like that idea. Mm-hmm.
Wow, I think I really had the wrong idea. I thought I knew what everyone liked, but I just knew what I liked. So I'm really glad I listened, because now, Marina, I think we could plan a pretty good time for all ages.
I think you're right, Casey.
But Marina, I have just one more question. Can you help me? It seems like you're pretty good at this stuff.
I'd be happy to.
And hey, I'm sorry I was bad at listening before. I'm really glad you're my friend.
Apology accepted, and I'm really glad that you're my friend, too.
So sometimes it's important to show others what we know. But sometimes even adults have to realize that they don't know everything and they still have a lot to learn. One of the things we believe as UUs is it's important to never stop learning. As you go to your classes today, I hope you're able to share something that you know and then invite someone else to share something that they know, so we all learn something new about the people in our community. And maybe you might even make a new friend.
And with that, I would like to invite you all to join us in singing the children and youth to their activities.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness that we learn light your hearts till we return.
To have some musical chairs going on up here. Yes. From a very early age, I learned about pivoting. To my father's Japanese-American grandparents, I was white. To my white grandparents, I was Japanese. Both sides valued education, and I had the privilege of an emphasis on that. I lived in a house with lots of books. I went to the library most weeks as a young child. As a high schooler, I lived in a sliver of a wealthy township that was weirdly sandwiched between two parcels of a poorer town. To my friends from the working class town, I was the kid who went to the big school at the top of the hill with the fancy campus. To my friends from the wealthier township, I was the kid who lived in the low valley, weird part of town of which their parents disapproved. I'm still learning about pivoting. Today, I'm on 2 boards. Both are minority-majority boards with a rich mosaic of identities. On both, I occupy positions of privilege because I'm largely white-presenting. I have a job in a relatively thriving ministry at a time when that is less common, and I've been around for a bit. On one board, I'm often told that people with experience are irrelevant now, which silences me. And on the other board, I'm often silenced because, honestly, I do not understand the politics of Oakland. So It's funny for me now to think that I was actually the president of the board of the Rainbow Community Center just over a decade ago, a position that a cisgender, straight person would probably never occupy today. And at the time, I thought this was a little weird even then, and I said, me? Does this make sense? And they said it did, because I understood my position and my privilege, and I could use it to help generate support for lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, questioning, and intersex people. And that was how I served. Pivoting can be complicated. When you did an anti-racism training back in the day, one of the questions was always to ask the people to recall their first encounter with a person of another race. Because for me, that was with each of my parents. I've always been very aware of identity. Those who have gone through life without having to think as much about it sometimes say these sorts of conversations are what is dividing our nation today. Many are concerned that these efforts to understand where one is positioned to others is making it harder for people to work together. And it's true that when we only operate through the view of one person at the table, when the culture is that dominant, it is a lot easier to get things done, truthfully. I've served on boards much more peacefully than the two I serve on today. And yet, when we're willing to bring the complexities of all of our experiences to bear, we release a powerful creative energy, and we allow the formation of truer relationships where people can be seen for who they are and where the power is mapped. So maybe it isn't so hard to pivot, to readjust our mirrors, as the words that Kristen read with the chalice lighting spoke of. I'm appreciative of Casey for bringing us this topic, so come, let us worship together.
Please rise and body your spirit for hymn 1003, Where Do We Come From? By B. Tate. These words, attributed to the artist Paul Gauguin, were set to music by Canadian gospel musician Brian Tate. Choose the part you want to sing. We will start with everyone together.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, what are we? Where are we going? Where do we
Hi, I'm Travis, and my pronouns are he and him, and now is the time in our service where we come together to bear witness to those joys and sorrows that are too great for any of us to hold alone. If you have written in our book of joys and sorrows today, please come forward to light a candle as I read your entry. I'm asking Reverend Leslie to light a candle of sorrow as we are holding the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist in Newport, Massachusetts in our hearts today. Their community minister, Helen M. Mergida, was hit by a car and killed while crossing the street, and the congregation is in mourning. I am asking Reverend Rodney to light a candle of concern for those impacted by the massive wildfires in the Texas Panhandle. We are holding them in our hearts as they try to get the fires contained. And I'm asking Reverend Leslie to light another candle. With sadness, she shares the news that our longtime member, Betty Todd, will be entering hospice care this week. The family needs meals delivered tonight and tomorrow. If you can help, please see Reverend Leslie after service. And I'm asking Casey Gardner to light a candle for her grandmother, Sylvia Beltran, who passed last Saturday after years of living with dementia. She was a UU by choice and truly lived those values in every way. She will be missed by the large and loving family she leaves behind. And I'm asking Reverend Leslie to light two final candles. The first represents all of the joys and sorrows not voiced aloud today, but still present on our hearts. And the second, a reminder of this one imperfect and precious world and our role in making it more loving and more just. Thank you.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
As we engage together today in contemplating positionality and what it might mean, both for us individually and collectively, I invite you to embrace a shared space that reminds us of the fluidity and potential for transformation of our societal positions. While acknowledging the differences in our life circumstances and privileges, let us also recognize the agency we hold to challenge and diminish these constructs. One way to do this is to remind ourselves that we are part of something much bigger. So I invite you now into this sacred moment together as we delve into the depths of what I'm calling prayer. Divine Spirit of life and connection, we recognize the turmoil and uncertainty swirling around our future as a people and a planet. We come together today before you not to seek answers beyond some omniscient or omnipresent deity of our ancestors, but instead to recognize the deep connection of each of us to one another. We hope in this moment to ignite a spark within our own spirits, knowing that we possess the power to effect change in our own lives. In this present moment, may we feel deeply connected with others who own positions and roles in life that are similar and different from ours. Help us contemplate how we stand in relationship to others and within and beyond our communities. The people of Gaza and Israel yearn for healing and peace and reconciliation amidst unimaginable suffering and loss. As Americans, may we humbly acknowledge our privilege and the opportunities we have to contribute positively. Let our voices rise in unison, urging our leaders to seek peaceful resolutions rather than resorting to war as a sole solution for disagreements among nations. May aid find its way to starving mouths, and may compassion find its way into hardened hearts. At the same time, we acknowledge our privilege as Americans. On the world front, we simultaneously recognize our democracy's deep vulnerability in this critical election year. As we navigate a new political cycle that approaches, may our hearts be open to empathize with the frustrations of those who view the current two-party system as inadequate and struggle to identify a suitable candidate. May our awareness of our own positions temper any anger or discontent, fostering empathy in its place, understanding among our neighbors. May we not, as a liberal community or faith, eat our own. Great advocate of inclusion of thought, open our hearts to both and thinking, and guide us in unifying our aspirations to embody the changes we wish to be. Let us persist in forging paths forward, even when answers seem so elusive. And let us be reminded that our communities of faith can be beacons of support, compassion, and love in our immediate homes and beyond. In the name of all that is holy, I say, amen, ashe, and blessed be.
I have seen 1,000 things, 1,000 lives, and what they bring to this world and to this home. But where I stand, well, I don't know. I'm an open book. I'll tell you everything I know to the darkest corners of my mind. My kingdom is wide, so wide-eyed I can track the tide between the spaces I try to find. 'Cause I have seen 1,000 things, 1,000 lives, and what they bring to this world and to this home. But where I stand, well, I don't know. I have little trouble walking in directions I don't know of, and I'm walking blind. 'Cause I have seen 1,000 things, 1,000 lives, and what they bring to this world and to this home. But where I stand, well, I don't know. And people come and people go, and people I will never 'cause I have seen 1,000 things, 1,000 lives, and what they bring to this world, to this home. But where I stand, well, I don't know.
Whoa, that was really wonderful. Good morning. I'm Janice Davis, a member of your Board of Trustees, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. And I just wanted, most of you know this already, but I am really fond of cooking, reading, watching birds, chatting, and all kinds of things that are written. So, in the season of in-betweenness, I call it, I was pleased to read in the cooking section of the newspaper yesterday some recipes that bridge the creaking close of winter and the beckoning of spring. Spring usually officially arrives on March 19th, but somebody failed to tell all of the weeds that are growing in our yard. They have all sprung. So I have spent a lot of time outside with them. The Audubon newsletter that arrived recently reminds us that the migrating hummingbirds are sure to arrive soon after a long flight from Central America and Mexico, and make sure that you hang those bird feeders for them on April 5th. So, we have spring chores cut out for us. The local newsletter pictures our neighborhood trees and bulbs blooming gloriously, and our Beacon newsletter is bursting with the plans of an active and vibrant congregation. But along with all of the great news about upcoming gatherings and important justice work that's happening here at MDUUC in the spring, is the very detailed and specific job of budgeting and planning and figuring for the upcoming church year. I ran a school for a long time and the budget season was really dreary. Anyway, today's call for the offering asks you to give according to your ability to support this beloved community now and to consider all of your contributions for the future. You can, if you're at home, at your computer or your screen, click on the Give Now button on the church website. You can put a check in the basket, or you can mail in your contributions to 55 Eckley Lane, Walnut Creek. Now, the ushers will gratefully come forward to collect this morning's offerings. another wow. Please join me in reading the dedication of the offering. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Good morning. My name is Casey Gardner, and my pronouns are she and her, or they and them. And I'm honored to get to speak to you about this topic today. I often bring up positionality to the people in my life, and the number one question is, what is that? So I'm really excited to have a chance to try to answer that question. So a little about me to start. I grew up in Oakland, and when I tell people that, they get one of two ideas in their minds. Either they imagine the Oakland lately portrayed in the media, a place full of crime and poverty, where people are increasingly turning to drugs, theft, or violence. They see a community littered with encampments where many are either eventually displaced or incarcerated. Or they think about a magical land of grassroots movements and justice work between First Friday hip-hop music and local artist collectives, of Lake Merritt and farmers markets and Telegraph Avenue, and the seemingly endless beauty between the marinas at Jack London and the redwood trees in the hills. The truth is that none of these perspectives are totally right, because actually all of them are. I grew up in a place of immense beauty and immense struggle, and both of these realities are what formed my personality and my values. But something I also learned from living in this liminal space, this place of extremes where oftentimes it is hard to pin down a definition, is that the way that people perceive my hometown, me, beauty, struggle, and actually the world as a whole is very consistent with what angle they have seen that world from. Typically, we conceptualize this as bias, the preconceptions individuals or institutions hold based on our lived systems of experience and belief. And the dangers of bias are fairly well known. In her book, Biased, Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt describes her work with police trainers, who she advises that, quote, bias, even when we are not conscious of it, has consequences that we need to understand and mitigate. The stereotypic associations we carry in our heads can affect what we perceive, how we think, and the actions we take. But what about when it isn't that simple? What if what we hold isn't so much a bias, rather a skewed self-perception based on multiple intersections of our identities and experiences which define our perspectives of where we stand? For example, I've lived a lot of life at 33. In fact, I often joke that I feel old because I've had so many different experiences, and I occupy so many different intersections that defining myself is usually hard. But I am going to try, because it is the first step in understanding the dance that is positionality. And I'm going to do this in what is actually called a positionality statement, which Leslie gave us one earlier. This is a concept that originated in the research world as putting forth information about the researcher that might influence the findings in the research itself. So here goes. I am a queer, gender nonconforming person that comes from a middle-class background. I'm an educator, a millennial, a college graduate, and I currently contend with both physical and psychiatric disabilities that affect my daily life. I identify as neurodivergent, as an agnostic, a UU, an anti-capitalist, an abuse survivor, an ally to marginalized people, and I also recognize myself as a descendant of both indigenous as immigrant people, as much as I am a racially white person. And I can see the world very clearly from all of these perspectives, but outside of them, I am limited. I do not know homelessness or family-based violence any more than I know what it means to be a person of color, developmentally disabled, a tribal member, undocumented, incarcerated, or marginalized as a result of any of these factors. Additionally, I do not know the unique struggle of coming from a family that regularly prioritizes money, status, and success over love, community, and wellness. I've heard that this comes with its own unique set of challenges. I also see the world from the point of view of a few strange intersections in my identities. For example, I am a teacher who is disabled in a few different ways. But that often means I need some of the same accommodations that I regularly provide for my students. I am a queer, non-binary person who spent time identifying as heterosexual and occupying a fairly cisnormative gender role. Also, my father is decidedly upper class while my mother continues to live near the poverty line. And I grew up simultaneously in both of those worlds, so I have the unique perspective of understanding this, even though I now have a fairly working class station. And I understand what it's like to regularly be the only white person in a room, as much as I have been in rooms where people of color are completely absent. I also know what it's like to watch other white people show disdain for undocumented immigrants without knowing that I would not be here if my great-grandparents had not crossed the border undocumented. These types of things happen when you are often standing in two worlds at once. But this is also an example of the danger of people understanding their positionality in a way that is lacking. For example, when they may be speaking directly to someone about an opinion they hold when the person they are speaking to actually has a direct experience with it, like we saw earlier when I tried to take over Marina's Time for All Ages. Despite evidence, she was clearly best suited to the task. And honestly, since I moved away from home, I've begun to notice people misjudging their own positionality more frequently. Maybe it isn't so much that it's more common, but perhaps it's more noticeable. As I leave a place where a mishmash of experiences and cultures breed people that tend to see the world through many different lenses. After all, positionality is most often miscalculated in groups that tend to be homogenous, where people are or are perceived as one thing. The more we are around people who are the same, the more limited we become in our understanding of the breadth of human experience. In these groups or variations of them, the greatest threats to community occur when people forget not just who they are speaking to, but where they are speaking from. Some examples include white people that feel entitled to define what is or isn't racist towards people of color. Wealthy people who tell those in poverty how to become wealthy, especially when, statistically speaking, socioeconomic status is more based in intergenerational privilege than in individuals' choices. Feelings get hurt when straight people attempt to joke about queerness, especially in the presence of those who have been ridiculed and oppressed for being openly and visibly queer. Or my personal favorite is when men spell out topics that their non-male listeners are highly aware of already. You may have heard this called mansplaining before, and yes, it happens often. And yes, it is an undervaluation of how often non-male people are talked at before they are listened to. These blunders in regards to positionality might feel harmless to those perpetuating them. In fact, we all at times might even feel entitled to have opinions in the absence of direct experience. But that isn't a product of that in itself is a product of our positionality, because it means we are not used to experiencing consequences as a product of speaking up. Also, when it comes to community, misjudging our positionality and our privilege can have a devastating impact. I want to tell you a story. Last Saturday, my grandmother, my mother's mother, passed away due to a long battle with dementia. 2 days later, my mother started chemotherapy for a recurrence of her breast cancer. As I walked into my first class of the day, I teach high school, after playing the game of should I or shouldn't I go to work, I got an email praising the 8 employees who had perfect attendance this year. My positionality pushed me to have a few reactions. First, I noticed that this list was entirely male, save one employee who was still probationary. Then I considered everyone on my staff, some of whom had a chronic disability, who was taking care of sick family members or young children, who had gotten COVID simply from being at work, who was experiencing financial insecurity, burnout, struggles with mental health, or all of the above. I also considered how my workplace culture was one that condemned absences as if they were a choice instead of a necessity. And the only response I could think of was to fire off one quick pointed email about ableism and something hostile workplace environment, because from where I stood, this was just another example of our administration dehumanizing and undervaluing us. But here, my positionality also got in the way, because I was conditioned to see leadership as a monolith and inherently oppressive because power structures only serve to disenfranchise the masses, right? Wrong. Because the person I was sending the email to wasn't even in leadership. She was the office manager. As it turned out, the email was actually meant to be internal and only congratulate those who it was for, not sent to the whole staff. It was an honest mistake. And 10 minutes later, she showed up to my room with a box of chocolates and a very sincere apology. And suddenly, I felt bad for assuming such negative intent. In actuality, we were both very interested in preserving community, but in my moment of only seeing from my position, especially in the context of my history, I didn't see a woman who, in all actuality, probably worked harder than I did most days to keep our workplace community together. So as the earlier song said, maybe I have seen 1,000 things, 1,000 lives. And maybe my perspective of myself is that I hold some high pluralistic view of the world, but in reality, I am also a little bit touched. For example, coming from a community torn apart by corrupt policing, corporate greed, and misguided local government, I have always had an inherent mistrust of authority, because people in power have caused a lot of pain for myself and the people that I care about. And I still have a really hard time interacting with people who I perceive to be wealthy, able-bodied, neurotypical, straight, and cisgender, probably because I spent most of my young life being ridiculed, shamed, and mistreated by people who fit this demographic. I also watched these same people grow up into adults who never named their privileges, or if they did, masked them for the sake of avoiding accountability. I did not fit their schema of what they considered normal, and they treated that as such, and I still carry that with me. And it's true, these are all people who are on their own journey, so I try to have compassion for them as best that I can. However, maybe this is why I hold a certain amount of empathy and space for people of color who so regularly watch white people like myself speak out their own oppression, when to be a person of color in this country comes with its own set of struggles and difficulties that no amount of empathy will allow any white person to fully comprehend. In fact, my oldest friend often rehashes how I, as a queer person, and her as a Black woman, both have had to combat perceptions in order to be allowed to authentically exist, and how this brings us closer, even though our stories are very different. I understand the irony of this. As I stand up here speaking on this topic, and the lack of Black and brown voices in this conversation is not lost on me. From where I stand, I can talk about my own oppression in all of its nuances, but I can also see a gaping hole in the opportunities given to Black and brown voices to express their experiences honestly. It almost gives me a reason to want to step away, as I recognize myself as part of this larger problem. But because I'm already here, I want to use this opportunity to instead bring those voices into the conversation, to use my platform for that purpose. So for this, I'd like to invite Audre Lorde, Black queer feminist speaker and author, to define the importance of positionality for all of us. In her essay, Age, Race, Class, and Sex, Women Redefining Difference, Lorde writes, "Certainly, there are very real differences between us of age, race, and sex. But it is not those differences between us that are separating us. It is rather our refusal to recognize these differences and to evaluate the distortions which result from our misnaming them and their effects upon human behavior and expectation." She goes on to say, "It is a lifetime pursuit for each of us to extract these distortions from our living at the same time as we recognize, reclaim, and define these differences upon which they are imposed. For we have been raised in a society where these differences were endemic within our living. Too often we pour the energy needed for recognizing and exploring difference into pretending these differences are either insurmountable variables or that they do not exist at all. This results in a voluntary isolation or false and treacherous connections. Either way, we do not develop tools for using human difference as a springboard for creative change within our lives. So yes, we are part of a faith that values and celebrates togetherness and the embrace of a community that attempts to eradicate barriers. We might just want to hold hands, stand in a circle, and call it a day. But if we come at this work without recognizing who we are before we approach the lived experience of others, are we truly building community? If we cannot look ourselves in the mirror and see both our privilege and oppression for what they are, how are we accurately able to assess both our responsibilities and our needs within that community? If we are not listening to the needs of others as much as we express our own needs, are we really sharing in this work? Are we doing what is best for everyone, or just what is best for everyone like us? Lorde also mentions this when she emphasizes how necessary it is for her to see herself for who she is as she expresses her identity within community. She says, "As a Black lesbian feminist comfortable with the many different ingredients of my identity, and a woman committed to racial and sexual freedom from oppression, I find that I'm constantly being encouraged to pluck out some aspect of myself and present this as a meaningful whole, eclipsing or denying the other parts of self. But this is as destructive and fragmenting as a way to live. My fullest concentration of energy is available to me only when I integrate all parts of who I am." This makes sense to me, because as someone who has lived many lives and stood in many places, I don't think it would be fair to only see me as a queer person or a young person or a teacher or a white person, disabled person, a person who sometimes sends impulsive emails. I am all of these things in constant conversation. Just as perhaps the people that I instinctively view as privileged may have elements of their identity that I could benefit from learning from. So then, what do we do about the fact that our positions might be influencing us to cause harm? Is this just a constant game of tug-of-war between the identities of the people we share space with? I don't think so. Because if we're constantly doing this math problem of who most needs to be acknowledged in every interaction, we sacrifice valuable opportunities for authentic connection. We also risk undervaluing our own narratives because we fear that they'll invalidate others. This is not the goal any more than it is something that anyone can do perfectly. However, it is important to look at both where we come from and where we are going as we do this work. In fights for racial justice, those who have suffered racial oppression must be elevated, and their complaints should be heard. In work towards battling inequities, we must consider who is most impacted by the absence of justice and include those stories that are currently missing from the conversation. When we are challenged by others in our communities, we must look for the places that they are coming from to better assess where they stand and what it might require of us to walk alongside them. And if people who hold privilege are able to own and utilize their real and tangible gifts, this actually puts resources into fighting for social justice. And it can be some of the most powerful tools in reaching the ears and hearts of oppressive institutions. Lorde herself admitted this is true, and I have to say that I agree. Because as distrustful as I am of wealth and its roots in privilege, I'm also immensely grateful and reverent of those who use that same privilege to feed homeless youth, or donate to arts scholarships, or throw block parties for their HOA to raise money for humanitarian aid in Gaza. Our positionality can be our struggle, but it can also be our greatest blessing. So as we go forward, maybe this is the lesson. The goal of recognizing positionality is not to decide who is more worthy of respect. Because, and I mean this, everyone is worthy of respect. But the work of positionality is recognizing who would most benefit from acknowledgement and who would most benefit from deference and humility in any given community effort. Just as I recognize that perhaps I should be at the center of discussions about maybe queer programming or advocacy for young adults, I'm probably the wrong person to weigh in on, I don't know, how to organize a Super Bowl party. Like, what even is football? And while I may stand by and support movements for justice on behalf of others, I should definitely not be the person who my white colleagues sometimes come to and ask me if things are racist. They know I grew up in Oakland, but I can only answer that question based on my adjacency to certain communities, not as members of them. My positionality limits my perspective. However, this is not a social deficiency or something that can or even should be surmounted. It is an understanding that allows me to know when it is my time to stand up and my time to step back, because I can only see through my own eyes and stand in my own shoes. And to do that comfortably, those shoes have to fit, and I have to wear them. And sure, I have walked down many roads and been in many communities, and sure, I have done quite a bit of living, and that might make me feel old at times, but I'm not. As many of you who are older than me probably acknowledged and even scoffed at when I said something along the lines of, I feel old. I have a lot of privilege in that just being a feeling and not a lived reality. But hey, that was me being unable to imagine and acknowledge my own positionality in the context of this community. So I'm sorry. I will try to do better, just like I all hope we can. I hope we all can. Because the way we show up and engage with each other in this beautiful struggle of creating lasting bonds, both because of our differences and in spite of them, depends on it. Thank you.
Please rise and body your spirit. For 1051, We Are, composed by Dr. Izai Barnwell, renowned vocalist and former member of the a cappella group Sweet Honey in the Rock. This hymn speaks of the importance of acknowledging our ancestors and finding hope in their legacy.
Sons of great visions, we're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations, seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. Our grandfather's dreaming. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Peace child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Peace child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
We may not always know where we stand, but may we always acknowledge who we are so we can better learn our place and our greater purpose in this vast and complicated world. Ashe, amen, and blessed be.